Welcome to the Muddied Waters of Freedom with your hosts, Matt Wright and Mohammed Shaker.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to the Vanguard. For Mohammed Shaker, I am Matt Wright, and together we are traversing the Muddied Waters of Freedom. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, man, I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic.
Amazing.
Excellent. We would like to welcome on a very special guest today. We have Mr. Bob White, who is currently running for Florida governor. So, Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
You can roll on up. There you go. Perfect. So what we do on this show, since he and I met because of kava bars, is we drink kava throughout the show, which is this drink that you have in front of you. It is an all-natural island drink that in the islands, they drink it for ceremonial purposes, and a lot of times it's used for when they talk about political events and things like that. So we just thought it was fitting that we drink it during the show. I am going to give you a fair warning. It doesn't taste great.
It doesn't taste bad. It just doesn't taste good. It tastes like...
It tastes earthy.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, I'm sure you won't mind if I pass.
All right, but we do have to thank Low Tide Kava Bar for the kava that we do drink during the show.
This is yours. I'm just...
If you decide you would like to partake in the original in the first bula,
you can do that, and then just try it out. Yeah, yeah. It won't hurt you.
Yeah. All right, shells up.
Oh, hold on.
Bula.
All right.
So it's been like a week and a half since we did a show.
Yeah.
I went out of town over the weekend. So I went down to the other coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good time. Got really muddy.
Good.
It was fun.
Yeah. That's always a good thing to do.
I got to see some people I hadn't seen in a while, so it was definitely fun.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will you do anything else? You're going to watch a movie, right?
That's a really sore subject. I have not seen that movie yet.
Oh, okay.
I have been trying to go see Dunkirk since the day it came out, and I have not seen
Bob liked it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent movie.
Yeah. I've wanted to see it, and I couldn't get anybody to go opening night. The second night, I couldn't go, and every night that I've had plans to go, something has happened, and I haven't been able to make it.
Yeah.
So,
which I got something to say about that movie when we get to the political stuff.
If you spoil anything of this movie,
no, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it, but it was a Washington. I think it was a Washington Post article. New York Times or something? Yeah, probably.
Okay, I know what you're gonna say then.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah, another movie I want to go see is Atomic Blonde, because hell yeah,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. No explanation necessary on that one. I definitely want to go see that movie.
And on my hat, I have my N7 patch today.
Yes.
Do you know what that is?
No.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I just noticed it said N7, so.
Well, it's just N7. We are the most premier Terran fighting force that defend the planet in the universe of Mass Effect.
Oh my god!
And I started playing the game again. I want to save Earth from the Reapers. It's gonna be pretty badass.
I don't have a clue what they're talking about.
Don't worry, I don't have a clue what he talks about most of the time.
We'll make sure you get an Xbox. Up to the whatever house they live in up there when they're governor.
Okay.
Or is it a palace? I don't even know. I've honestly never been to where Skeletor lives.
Yeah. Skeletor. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Bob. I know Muhammad knows you, but I met you literally when you walked in the door.
Okay, great. No problem at all.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm a Florida native, fourth generation, so this is my home where I grew up. I love the state of Florida and want to do everything I can to make sure that it's a hospitable environment for generations to come.
Okay.
We grew up over in the central part of the state, a little town called Haines City, spent our days hunting, fishing, water skiing, boating, going to the beach, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, it was really a great life. I product of the public schools, graduated from the University of Central Florida.
Go Knights.
But of course I'm so old that when I graduated, it was still Florida Technological University.
Okay.
That was the name of the school when it started out.
What degree did you graduate?
Business administration.
Okay.
So that's been my career in the private sector. Has been always associated with one business or another. I have a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, so I've owned some of my own businesses, and some have gone well, and some have gone not so well. I tell people I've experienced both success and failure in my business life, my personal life, and even in my spiritual life. So, but I've learned from all of it. And I believe that all of it has made me the person that I am today, and qualifies me to be governor of the state of Florida.
Okay. You said your religious life. What are you?
Protestant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just Protestant.
Well, Methodist. My grandfather. I don't really ascribe to a quote religion necessarily. My grandfather was a Methodist minister. Mm-hmm. I grew up in the Methodist church. The church that I attend today is a Methodist church, but I'm really not so much tuned into the dogma, if you will, of the religion. I consider myself a disciple and try to behave as I'm taught to behave, in that regard. So it's really more about the spirituality of it than it is the religiosity of it. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah. What was I going to say here? Last time I saw you was at the we were in Orlando at the it was the AFP's what is it called? The Defending the American Dream Summit.
Right.
I think we had who showed up? Marco Rubio was there, right? Didn't Marco show up?
There were a lot of speakers there.
Yeah.
And I think he was one of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was pretty awesome, even though there were a lot of people that I don't necessarily agree with.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, but I was there with I was working a LI table with the Leadership Institute.
Right.
Yeah, I think we were looking for students, but it was a great time. Did you go to any other conventions or conferences since then? I think that was just last.
That was last September. I think.
Something like that. Yeah. Did you go anywhere else after that? A year
ago. Well, the only other things that I've done have been Republican Party of Florida quarterly meetings.
Yeah.
And their annual meeting, which was back this past January. So I've been participating in all of those. But that's probably it as far as politics go. I missed Freedom Fest. I would have liked to have been there.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
It just wasn't in the cards given this campaign.
Yeah, I mean it's out all the way in Vegas. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And obviously you do the monthly phone calls.
Right. Exactly.
That I always have an issue connecting to. But I know I'm not alone half the time because I see all the emails like, I tried calling in. I tried calling in. I was like, I'm not going to put an email like everybody else is.
Well, there will be one this Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Put it on your calendar and see if you can get in.
Yeah. Oh, man. So tell us about your philosophy, like your favorite politicians, economists, what you like to label yourself, if anything, how you look at other philosophies, that's important, and what brought. I mean, you're libertarian, so what got you into the movement? Like Ron Paul brought me in the movement.
Sure.
So what brought you to be more libertarian?
Right. Well, as you know, of course.
Oh, and what were you before you became that?
Well, let's understand. I am running in the Republican primary. I am a registered Republican and have been, for virtually all my life.
Yes.
But I do have libertarian tendencies and libertarian leanings. No question about that. Limited government, constitutionally limited government. Consider myself a constitutionally conservative libertarian. Mm-hmm. Rand Paul was my candidate in the presidential cycle.
Me too.
And I continue to be a huge fan of his. As far as economists go, I'll just tell you that every year we sponsor the Constitution Day dinner over in Melbourne, Florida, and this year our keynote speaker is Tom Woods. That tells you a lot.
He loves it. Doesn't he live in Melbourne?
He lives in St. Cloud now.
Okay, yeah,
which is close by.
Yeah.
So we got him for the speaker's fee and no transportation, no travel costs. That was a big thing.
Yeah,
But so there you go. The Mises Institute.
That's where he is right now.
Exactly. It's out there for their week long.
It's amazing. I love it.
Great.
Yeah.
So that's on September the 23rd, Saturday, September the 23rd. And he'll be our keynote speaker, and we have the Speaker of the Florida House, Richard Corcoran, coming as a featured speaker as well.
Yeah.
So that'll be an interesting combination to hear the two of them together.
Of course.
And I tell people that, people have asked me, Bob, you're running for governor, and Richard Corcoran is talking about running for governor. Are you still going to have him come and speak at the Constitution Day dinner? And I say, well, of course I am. Number one, why would I deny the people of Brevard County the opportunity to hear from one of the three most powerful people in state government? And number two is, if he does decide to run for governor, he'll automatically become the second best candidate in the race. So of course we're going to continue to have him.
Well, yeah. Who's confirmed running right now other than Adam Putnam?
Well, besides Adam and myself, there are 7 other Republicans that are currently declared candidates. But here's what we need to understand about that. At this stage in the game, all you have to do to be a declared candidate is fill out one piece of paper that says, okay, I'm running. My campaign treasurer is, and you identify that person, and my depository, my bank account for the campaign is at such and such a bank. And that allows you to go out and begin to raise money, and spend money directly on behalf of your candidacy. Actual qualifying doesn't happen until June of next year, and that's when you have to either turn in several 100,000 signatures or you have to pay the $12,000 qualifying fee.
Okay.
So at that point, I'm expecting of those other 7 that are in the race at this point, many of them won't pay the qualifying fee. It's hard to say how many actually will or won't.
And from what I understand, the signature bar that you have to hit is very difficult to hit.
It is. I mean, the way I look at it is, if you're going to try to qualify by petition, you're going to have to pay to have it done.
Yeah.
You're going to have to spend money to have it done. You're going to have to hire people.
People
to
walking, yeah.
So you might as well just pay the qualifying fee.
Yeah.
Which is $12,000. It's not nothing to sneeze at, but it's not a bank breaker. So we can clearly do that, and that allows us to concentrate on the campaign and not concentrate on trying to collect signatures.
Yeah, makes sense.
Now, there's several other people that are rumored to be getting in. Jack Latvala from this area, of course, state senator from Sarasota, is going to be announcing on August the 16th. I already mentioned Richard Corcoran. It's all but certain he's getting in. He says he hasn't made that decision yet, and he's waiting until after next year's legislative session. But, I mean, come on, let's face it. If you establish a political committee and you go out and you raise a couple of $1 million in the first month into that political committee, and you hire a pollster and you hire a media consultant, there's a pretty good chance you're getting in.
Probably, yeah.
So we can expect him to get in. And then finally, you've got Ron DeSantis is looking at the race, the congressman from over in Volusia County.
Yeah,
he's looking at it. So this could be a crowded field. There could be 5 of us with a very viable opportunity.
Although I'd be unhappy voting for him after he gave up. Well, no, that wasn't really his fault. That was Marcus' fault for running again when he said he wasn't.
Right.
Because I know he would have been a great person in the Senate if he had made it.
I think we had 2 good guys there, because I liked Ron, but I also liked Todd Wilcox. I thought Todd, had some really good ideas. Ron certainly, though, with his creds as far as the liberty movement and the conservative movement, would have done a great job.
Yeah.
Either one of them would have been better than Marco.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I'm certain almost everybody watching us agrees with that.
No doubt.
Yeah. So tell us, if you were to win, actually, no, just let's start campaigning. What are your top issues for Florida? Yeah.
Sure, I'll be happy to talk about that. As you know, I've been the chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus of Central East Florida, our chapter over in Melbourne, for 7 years. I've been chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus of Florida, our state organization, now for 4 years. And so during that time, there have been countless trips back and forth to Tallahassee during committee weeks, as well as during the legislative session itself. And, as you know, we put together a legislative agenda every year of bills that we're either going to support or oppose. And the choice is driven by the philosophies of the RLC, which are, limited constitutional government, free people, free markets, fidelity to the Constitution. So that drives our choices. So we got a lot of property rights bills, ending red light cameras, all of those kinds of bills, limited government bills, hit our package. But the one thing that I've noticed that's been consistent in the 7 years and getting worse each year that goes by is that I'm convinced now that the people of Florida have literally lost their voice in the legislative process. as well as before just government in general, the executive agencies in the state of Florida up in Tallahassee. It's been drowned out by what I'm calling the dark money special interest contributions that are being literally laundered. Millions of dollars worth of dark money contributions are being laundered through what are called political committees that are operated by the powers that be in Tallahassee. And it's become a big echo chamber up there. We literally now have a political class, if you will, a political elite that consists of the lobbyists and the special interests that they represent and the politicians that take their money and do their bidding.
Yeah.
So that's the top issue for me in this race, is to try to end that domination in Tallahassee by the special interests and their lobbyists and restore the people's voice to the process. So that's what drove me to get into the race in the first place, and it's what we spend a lot of our time talking about as we go around the state of Florida.
Okay. Now, what about other issues like solar?
Oh, well, I think, as you know, I was a big advocate for Amendment 4, and was glad to see that, that we prevailed on that issue. As well as the other amendment that was on. We had one amendment on the primary ballot and the other one on the general election ballot, as I recall. We had two different amendments, and we won on both issues.
Yes,
which was good. We had that one episode where the power industry, FPL and Duke Energy, and all of them were literally trying to pull a fast one on the people of Florida.
Yeah, yes.
And you remember the one guy got caught with an open mic,
talking,
literally admitting to the fact that they were deceiving the voters, and that whole thing just blew up in their face.
Yeah.
So, I was very happy to see that they had spent literally $20-30 million trying to win, and they lost anyway, which was great. So I'm an advocate for those kinds of renewable sources. That doesn't mean that I'm necessarily opposed to the fossil fuel industry or anything like that.
No, of course not.
I mean, we have to pursue everything.
Yeah, I'd kick you off the show if you were.
Yeah, but I mean, in Florida, I mean, come on.
And then I'd call Matt.
Yeah, right, exactly. But in Florida, I mean, come on, how can you not be for solar energy?
Yeah,
right?
No, of course, yeah. Well, the issue is opening up the markets to let people even use them, and not have because what they were trying to do, from what I remember. Understanding what they're trying to do is they're trying to monopolize and be the sole owners and operators of those panels, and that was going to be a big issue. And they're
but they were doing it in a way it was just like, oh, it's the solar bill.
Yeah.
And, oh, great. Yeah, no, I'm for that.
That was the deceit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was the deceit that they were practicing.
It was funny when they were doing the petitions for it. I was down at low tide, and this woman comes up and she's like, "Would you mind signing the solar bill petition?" And I said, "Which one is it?" The good one. You're going to have to be a lot more specific before I sign that piece of paper, because of course you're going to say that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, one of the amendments would have does allow people to actually put solar on their home without it impacting their property value.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so that was
that was the one that was tied into Amendment 4,
right.
Which would make it cheaper for people to buy, because if someone's willing to buy the solar panel now, they don't have to be worried about resale value because their house might cost more,
right?
So on and so forth,
right?
Yeah.
So when I announced that you were going to be on the show, I asked people for questions, and since I know many libertarians, they all wanted to know. Most of them wanted to know one thing, and it's really easy to be summed up. What about weed?
Okay, it's probably not nearly as easy as you might think it is, because many of your listeners are probably not going to appreciate.
Well, I just meant easy for me to sum up.
Oh, okay, all right. The question.
The question was easy to sum up.
Honestly, we have too many types of people listening.
Yeah.
So
well, here's where I am.
Yeah.
I mean, I supported Amendment 2, medical cannabis. I think that there's clearly a need for it.
Yeah.
I think we have a drug problem in Florida. It's not marijuana. It's opioids.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've been following is there have been a number of studies that have come out recently by very reputable institutions that are showing that in states that have medical cannabis, the opioid addiction and the deaths from opioid addictions are like 25% less than they are in states that don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, it's possible for folks that are addicted to opioids to be able to use cannabis to be able to kick that addiction.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I mean, we've got way too many people on opioids that are former military. You know, they came back, they were injured overseas, they come back, they have excruciating pain as a result of their injuries, or construction workers, or people that are injured in automobile accidents. And the doctors put them on these opioids, they get hooked, and before you know it, they've got a real problem.
Yeah.
And, so anything that we can do to help those people, we've got to do. I saw something just recently, let me point this out too. In the first 6 months of this year alone, over 2,500 Floridians died as a result of their opioid addictions. Now, that's a staggering number, largely because it represents such a huge increase. That's roughly 14 people a day, whereas just 2 years ago, in 2014, the last year that they had numbers for it, the rate was like 7 a day. So it is absolutely exploding exponentially, and we've got to address that issue. That's where I am on medical. I'll just be right up front with you though. On recreational, I just don't think the state of Florida is ready for it yet.
Okay.
I think demographically you're going to get there eventually, but because you got 70% of the people to vote for Amendment 2, doesn't mean that you'd get 60% to vote for an amendment to legalize recreational. You're not going to get it from the legislature. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
There's a practical side to this that we all need to be aware of. You're not going to get it from the legislature. You could probably get it on the ballot. You could probably conduct a petition drive and get it on the ballot, but I just don't think you get to 60%.
Okay.
So I'm for a drug policy that makes sense, and this kind of ties into where I am on criminal justice reform, because we are incarcerating way too many people. We're putting way too many people in our penal institutions for nonviolent offenses, and certainly possession is one of those.
Yeah.
So while I don't think the state's ready for recreational, I would certainly be in favor of decriminalization.
Excellent.
No one should spend even a single night in jail because they were in possession of an amount of any controlled substance that was clearly intended for their personal use. That does nothing but create problems for society.
Yeah.
It turns people into felons that shouldn't be felons. It takes, in many cases, breadwinners out of their homes.
Yeah.
It's just a ridiculous policy, and so I would be in favor of decriminalization.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we both know. Maybe you do too, but we have plenty of friends that use marijuana or consume marijuana for a lot of different reasons. I have friends that are veterans that use it, both medically because of pain and like sleep issues, and recreationally. If aside from like Florida itself being ready for it, though, I mean, I guess, but you do agree that it's a problem that we're putting so much money and resources fighting a thing that we're just not winning.
Yeah, the war on drugs has been an abject failure.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. We've spent billions and billions of dollars in a war that can't be won because you're trying to legislate so-called morality.
Yeah.
Decisions that people are making for themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm supporting decriminalization as a part of this issue, and that's why in the area of criminal justice reform, we're looking at numbers where Florida incarcerates like 23% more people per capita than just about any other state in the country.
Yeah.
We have probably the highest per capita incarceration rate of any state out there. It's just inexcusable. So we do have to address these issues through criminal justice reform. And if you look around the state of Florida, you're already seeing that certain local communities are beginning to pass their own decriminalization efforts. And so we're now in a situation where different people in different parts of the state are being treated differently. And that's not right either.
Okay.
Plus, on top of which, when it finally comes right down to it, the most dangerous drug in society is alcohol. Always has been, probably always will be.
Yeah.
And really, where is it the place of government to tell one group of people that their drug of choice is legal and then tell another group of people that their drug of choice is illegal? So that's why I'm saying I think that you get there eventually. The demographics are certainly in your favor to get there. But the state's not ready for it yet, so I'm certainly not going to be, the advocate to go out there and lead the charge, so to speak.
Okay.
All right. So as we all know, last night John McCain voted no on the skinny repeal, which at 1:15 in the morning, I went to make a joke on Twitter, and I saw that, and I mean, I still made the joke, but yeah, it was that blew my mind. I was like, John McCain was the reason that happened. Mm-hmm. Way to campaign for the last 7 years. Nice job. But a lot of people have been asking what you would do about healthcare in Florida, and I didn't see it on your website, so I'm going to let you tell everybody what it is your plan was.
Well, we do have it. There is a healthcare platform position on my website, which, by the way, is www.bob4florida.com. That's FOR, not the number. BobFORFlorida.com. Check it out. It's got lots of issues on there that you can check me out on. Here's where I am on healthcare in Florida. It is a huge driver in our budget in the state of Florida. The two biggest ticket items in the Florida budget are education and healthcare. And by healthcare specifically, most of that is Medicaid driven. Almost a full third of our budget is being spent in Medicaid. Now, that's a shared responsibility between the state and the federal government. Yeah. The state kicks in about 60% of the total that we spend. But you may recall that one of the planks or one of the things that Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, was trying to do was to get the states to expand their Medicaid roles. And I was opposed to that from the very beginning, and I continue to be to this day. What I've said from all along is that if you really care about the poor in the state of Florida, if you care about our elderly poor, our working poor, the last thing in the world you want to do is expand the Medicaid system. It's completely broken. New Medicaid recipients typically wait anywhere from 45 to 60 days to get an appointment if they can even find a provider in the first place that's willing to take new patients. And then they typically have to drive anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour to get there, to see someone. So that's a horrendous kind of a system. It does no one any good. And to put another 800,000 people into a system that's already broken to that extent doesn't make any sense at all. So what I'm advocating is a number of different free market approaches to the problem. One of them would be direct primary care agreements, which we supported a bill for direct primary care this past session in Tallahassee.
I don't know what that means.
Well, that's where doctors and patients can actually sign an agreement together, where the doctor says, okay, for X number of dollars per month, these are the services that I'm going to offer you at basically no charge.
Yeah.
So, but it's not insurance. Okay, so it can't be, and that was the bill that we were supporting, was to define direct primary care as being outside the scope of insurance, so that the Florida Department of Insurance couldn't step in and try to regulate it.
Okay.
All right. So, concierge medicine is kind of a form of direct primary care, only it's typically, as the term implies, concierge, it implies a very high level of service for a very large expense.
Yeah.
Direct primary care is a little different than that. There are groups that are popping up in other places. There's a direct primary care provider in Kentucky, for instance, that and of course they're everywhere. It's not just Kentucky, but this one pops to mind. I think their minimum is like $50 per month for an individual, and you get all of your well care visits are included in that price. If you need stitches, you get stitches. If you need X-rays, you get X-rays. If you need a bone set, you get the bone set. And this is for like $50 a month, or for a family, depending on how many people, that might be $250, $300 a month.
Yeah.
But it's all included, and then on top of that, you can get your prescriptions filled by that doctor who basically provides them for you at his cost, or maybe his cost plus 10%. So it's a very affordable alternative for people to be able to participate. And what's really interesting is that, as you guys know, these deductibles on our insurance are so high.
It's insane.
It's crazy. A lot of people that have health insurance are actually signing up for direct primary care at $50 or $100 a month, because even then it's significantly less for them, because their deductibles are so high that if they tried to get covered under insurance, they couldn't.
Right.
So it just makes sense financially. So you've got that. You've got direct primary care, and then there are these sharing programs, like I think they call them MediShare, where I know there's one that's headquartered right there in Brevard County, where I'm from, and these are national in scope, most of them, where people sign up as, it's like a membership. It's not an insurance policy. Okay, so because you're not signing up with an insurance company, it's like a membership program, and you pay a certain amount of money per month. But then if something, it's almost like a catastrophic insurance policy. If something happens to you and you go into the hospital for whatever reason, the association steps up and foots the bill.
That's like one of Rand's big points on his replace plan was allowing group insurance type stuff.
That's very similar. That's very similar to what I'm talking about here. Only in that case, what he was talking about was allowing people in certain professions to join a pool. For purchasing purposes, but they would still be purchasing an actual insurance policy. Okay. So this is a little different. And what's interesting about these programs is that the legislation actually exempted them, so they were allowed to continue to operate. And I've heard some really good things from people about those. But Rand's approach, it was the approach that I've favored all along, a full-blown repeal, period, with free market solutions like health savings accounts and buying insurance across state lines. All of those kinds of things just make perfect sense. There's so much that we could do from a free market perspective and just get the government completely out of it. That would be my choice.
If someone were to, a young Democrat would come up to you and say, like, well, healthcare is a right, or you hate the poor, or, all those kind of arguments about repeal or about reducing, I guess, Medicaid, or even not expanding it any further than it is. What would be your response to that? Well, I mean, because they're going to want an answer.
Sure. Well, we already talked about the Medicaid issue, and the fact that it's a completely broken system that we shouldn't be expanding. We should be looking for alternatives to it. So there's my answer there. The answer about medical care being a right, it's not a right; it's a commodity.
Yes.
Okay, that's to begin with, and I think Rand Paul's argument, frankly, on whether or not it's a right was just dead on point.
I think that I've seen that video so much over the last few days, and
I can practically recite it myself.
It is spot on.
It is. It absolutely is. How in the world could you tell someone you basically are going to be enslaving someone? Mm-hmm. Okay, if you're going to make it a right, then the doctors, the nurses, the anesthesiologists, you're basically making them slaves to the system. You're telling them that you have to provide this service, that you went to school X number of years, the money that you invested in your education, you now are compelled by the government, required by the government to provide that, that expertise, that service to other people because they have a right to your intellectual property and your skill. And I'm sorry, it's just not a right. You can't compel somebody to service the needs of another person.
Yeah. Good. What about this had came up last year maybe, and I remember Chris Ladvala voted in a way I didn't like on this. But if you were able to have some kind of input in on this, open carry in Florida.
Oh, okay.
That was a question that somebody brought up today on one of our posts.
So sure, I'll be happy to answer that question. I am an open carry supporter.
Okay.
I'm a campus carry supporter.
Excellent.
I have my concealed carry permit myself. I have a home defense weapon and I have a personal defense weapon that I carry with me virtually everywhere I go. I say virtually everywhere I go. It's not on me right now, but it's out in my car. I can tell you that. I just figured I'd be safe with you guys. Maybe I'm wrong there. I don't know. I figured this is probably like a fortress in here.
Well, yeah. We got all the trees.
But seriously, I mean, these are issues of personal defense. I consider myself to be my own first responder. Mm-hmm. And that's not taking anything away from our professional first responders, all of whom, I support them, I admire them, I appreciate them for their courage and their willingness to put themselves out on the line for all of us every single day. But our local sheriff in Brevard County is a friend of mine, Wayne Ivey, and he basically has said that, look, you can always count on the police to be there in minutes when seconds count.
Yes.
And to
absolutely.
me, that's what it all comes down to. So I've taken responsibility for myself and for my wife and for my children and grandchildren when they're with me and for anybody that's around me, if something should happen. And I think that everybody that's inclined that way, if you're not inclined, then by all means, don't be your own first responder. But if you have that inclination, get trained, get out there, get permitted, and be prepared to respond. So as an organization, the Republican Liberty Caucus supported all of the open carry and campus carry bills last year. We'll continue to support those in the future. The idea that there should be a government mandated gun-free zone, anywhere in the state, to me is just ridiculous. Yeah. I just don't see how in the world we can possibly take away somebody's right to defend themselves, regardless of where they are.
Yeah. Before I turn it over to Matt, tying into that, some of the worries, like one of the things that actually I've seen Chris. By the way, is your sheriff friend is he okay with open carry?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Our sheriff is not.
Yeah. Yeah. That is accurate. He does not like open carry.
Yeah. I don't know if do you know Joshua Black by any chance?
I do know Joshua.
Okay. Yeah. Josh had his whole fire sheriff Bob thing for the longest time, and that was one of the biggest points because he's not for it. But that's good. Good on that sheriff. Something that somebody might say is one of Florida's biggest economic sectors is tourism. So don't you think that having everybody walking around with a gun on them gonna scare people away from coming here to enjoy Disney and like our beaches here, or what? Like,
no,
what's your response to a question like that?
No, I don't think so at all. I think that in the first place, Florida is one of only 5 states in the entire country that don't allow some form of open carry.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I mean, I don't see 45 other states that are suffering wholesale losses and people wanting to visit. And if you look at the numbers, the statistics are very clear. The safest states in the country are those states that allow it.
Yeah.
So you can make a huge case for it being a safety enhancement more so than anything else. Now you mentioned Joshua. He and I got into it a little bit the other night on Facebook because he was upset because the open carry that I have advocated is for those folks that have their concealed carry permit.
Okay.
So, and he took me to task because that's not really true constitutional carry.
Yeah.
And I agree, it's not. But there are 2 constitutions that are at work here in the state of Florida. One is the federal constitution, and the other is the state constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And so the state constitution clearly does give the legislature and the executive branch authority to regulate, ownership of handguns or any kind of weapon for that matter. So we have to keep that in mind. So what I've said is that we have to deal with reality.
Yeah.
We can be ideologues and accomplish nothing, or we can be practical tacticians and accomplish a tremendous amount. So I'm for what I think can be achieved. And given the state of our current legislature, you're not going to get open carry. You're not going to get constitutional carry out of this legislature at this point in time.
Yeah.
But you do have a chance to get open carry for those that are already permit holders.
Yeah.
And they're clearly the most responsible group of people in society.
Nationally.
When it comes to guns.
Yeah. Oh crap! I lost my train of thought.
Well, one of the things.
Getting back, let me just say this: getting back to the whole tourism thing. I mean, take a look at what happened at the airport down in Fort Lauderdale. Okay, because baggage claim is a government-mandated gun-free zone.
Uh-huh.
A guy just checked his gun in his bag.
Oh, yeah. That was a few months ago.
The guy just checked his gun in his bag, and then when he got off the plane, he went to baggage claim, got his bag, went into the bathroom, got his weapon out of his bag, and then went out into the baggage claim area, which was a government-mandated gun-free zone, and started blowing people away.
Yeah.
8 people lost their lives.
Yeah.
Take a look at the Orlando Pulse nightclub. Horrendous massacre.
Just
a horrible waste of life. And we have a statute on the books in Florida that says that if you own an establishment that derives 50% or more of its income from the sale of alcoholic beverages, it's a gun-free zone.
Yeah.
No guns allowed. The owner can't have one. The owner can't hire armed security personnel to protect their patrons. That's absurd.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah.
So to me, if we have very many more incidents like that, how is that not impacting the potential for tourism in the state of Florida? I think it does.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to ask about is Florida, I don't remember the exact number, but a vast number of the jobs that we have here in Florida require licenses through the state. Like, even so far, like when I was working on the Walsifer campaign, one that we used often was you need a license to braid hair.
Right.
Right, and we, like we said that one as a joke, but it is a license you actually need. And we think that, many of us think that that's just idiotic.
Yeah.
So, like, what is your positioning on the licensing issues for our jobs here in Florida? And if we were to get rid of those, would it make it, personally, I think it would make it easier for people to get jobs, to get work, where they don't have to go through all this if they get the training without having to pay all the extra money. So I just want to get your take on what the licensing for jobs is here in Florida.
Well, that's a part of my jobs platform, if you will. I have a Real Jobs for Florida platform that's that's on the website, and people can go there and see it. But what I've basically said is that Florida, what we need to do, the approach to jobs that we need to take, is a complete deregulation, of the economy, to the point where we get rid of all of these licensing laws. I mean, sure. I mean, if you're going to be a doctor, you probably ought to have a license before you can cut on somebody or prescribe medicine. Nobody has a problem with that. But like you said, braiding hair, I mean, that's
he talks about the licensing thing a lot. Because
No, you're good.
Okay, so you want people to cut on you without a license?
Not this episode, but
I was going to say, don't get him started on it. It's a 20-minute just rant that he goes into.
Well, here's what we're doing in Florida. We're spending, we have been spending through Enterprise Florida, for instance, through the Quick Action Closing Fund. We've been spending buku millions of dollars to try to attract people, corporations, big corporations from other states to come here, and calling it job creation. That's not job creation. That's job pilfering. We're pilfering jobs from other states and bringing them here, and that's all well and good in the sense that Floridians get hired. So if that's your perspective, fine, but I don't think that's the right approach. I think that's corporate welfare.
Yes.
I think it's
absolutely.
I think it's
100%.
absolute crony capitalism, and it's the state picking winners and losers. So that's why I say that what we need to do is we need to deregulate the economy to the point where we create incentives and abilities for people to start up new businesses, because every study in the world that's ever been done on job creation clearly establishes that the real job creation takes place at that level, at the small business level and at the new startup level. That's where the most jobs are created. So I want to see an economic environment where businesses of all levels have an opportunity to thrive and hire more people, whether they be small, medium, or large. It doesn't matter to me. It just shouldn't be the government deciding who gets to thrive and who doesn't get to thrive. Yeah. And the government shouldn't be taking tax dollars from one business person or from one business owner and using those same tax dollars to hire or to entice a large corporation to come to Florida that might actually end up competing with that business owner, that local existing business owner whose taxes were taken for that purpose. That just doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's money out of these other businesses' pockets to expand do whatever they want to do.
You ought to be able to start a business in your garage. Or in your 100%. Back bedroom if you want to.
Right.
And that used to
or
be...
Or even your front living room.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. And that used to be a pretty easy thing to do. It's gotten harder and harder and harder in Florida to be able to start that new business without having to get a commercial space, without having to get a commercial license of some kind. It's ridiculous. Yeah. The number of licenses that are required.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've always thought that, as Mo will often say, that licensing is stupid.
And let the marketplace take care of it.
Right.
I mean, if you do a lousy job, people aren't going to come back to you.
Yeah, people aren't going to use you.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah. And we can even talk a lot more about that after this. Get your opinion on what I'm saying about it, because we've talked about it on the show before, so everyone's heard it
multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's because.
Here we go.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say that, I was a former combat medic, and I've had to deal with that.
Right.
And when I looked at the bigger picture, I saw that they were hurting regular people by even some of these certain medical licensing. And I promise I won't get into it, but I had a national license, but I had to retake the national license that was in my pocket to work in Florida, which to me made no sense. I'm like, okay, well, not only are you keeping me from a job, you're keeping me from helping other people out there by being on a Sunstar truck or a fire department truck. And how many other people are are also dealing with that. So you're actually keeping a lot of medical professionals possibly from working here,
right?
And helping people in this community, and those people get jobs.
Sure.
So
reciprocity issue.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I did promise my buddy Nick Yeager that I would ask one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's your opinion on fracking?
Okay, I think that fracking nationally has been a real boon, okay, for the economy. But I think that Florida's different, okay? And here's why. And we're geologically different than most other states. So because fracking is a good idea in a place like North or South Dakota does not mean that when you have a Florida aquifer like ours is, and we get our drinking water the way that we do, and it's all sandstone and limestone and those kinds of things, and it's a shallow aquifer, it's all close, it's all close to the surface. I think that sets us apart. Geologically, I just don't think fracking makes sense in the state of Florida.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess this question is similar. My friend Jeremy Dolan, he wanted to know if you have any plans to hold United States the sugar industry here in Florida, accountable for dumping toxic waste into the Gulf of Mexico and draining the Everglades water supply. Like, what's your opinion on that?
Well, let me just tell you that that's one of the areas where I'm clearly able to differentiate myself from, for instance, Adam Putnam.
Okay,
because Adam Putnam has a political committee called Florida Grown.
Yes.
And if you look at the contribution reports, you'll find that U.S. Sugar is into Adam Putnam for over $400,000.
Okay,
just that one entity. And then, many, many other big agricultural firms around the state of Florida are into him for $50,000, $100,000 a pop.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be able to expect Adam Putnam, to take a hard line with any of these individuals. That's one of the reasons that I don't have a political committee. It's one of the reasons that I'm not taking those kinds of special interest contributions, is that I want to make sure that I have the ability to hold them accountable, on behalf of the taxpayers of Florida.
Yeah.
They literally need to have their voice restored in Tallahassee, and it's not going to come from the likes of a politician like Adam Putnam or anybody else that's taking those kind of contributions.
Yeah.
Right.
So will I hold them accountable? Sure. If there's verifiable proof of them dumping or doing something like that, then yeah, they ought to be held accountable.
Yeah.
Certainly they should.
Well, I have a question, and I don't know if you can even affect this sort of thing as governor, or maybe you can through other tools, but I hate gerrymandering, and I think everybody does.
I don't know a lot of people who are like,
yeah,
yes.
Woo, gerrymandering, yeah. But one thing I actually disagree with Rand Paul highly on, probably you too, because a lot of people actually really like term limits.
Right.
Do you like term limits?
I'm a term limit supporter.
Okay, and that's fine. I don't, and I'll leave it at that. I feel as if a really good way to deal with it is to fix gerrymandering. Is there anything you can do about that? And or I don't know if you can. If you can, what would you do, or what kind of suggestions would you have with gerrymandering?
Well, it's a good question. You remember we had some constitutional amendments that were on the ballot that got passed a few election cycles ago, and then they got caught up in the courts. And we had these plans that were put together. Because of the new census in 2010, by 2012 they were supposed to come out with all the new districts. And the Florida House had a plan, and the Florida Senate had a plan, and the court ended up stepping in and taking control over the issue because the court didn't. They were being sued. The state was being sued, I think, by the League of Women Voters and maybe one or two other entities signed on to that, and so the court ended up taking it over. And that's not necessarily a good thing that the court took it over.
Yeah.
But there were in these new amendments that were put forward and passed, there were these requirements for contiguous, lines of districts and those kinds of things. It's a difficult issue.
Yeah.
Certainly, as governor, I could have an influence on it, but it would kind of be an after the fact thing to the extent that, redistricting happens once every 10 years.
Yes.
Okay, it's not something that happens all the time up there. And so it's already happened, and we're talking about, we'd be taking office in 2019. So the 2020 census would be up, and so the next time we'd have an opportunity to address it would be in probably 2022,
if
you will.
Okay.
So that would be the next opportunity to address it. And I do believe that the legislature should have the responsibility for setting their own districts. And I do think that they need to do a better job of creating fair districts.
Yeah.
That's about as far as I can go with that issue right now.
Okay.
All right.
Can I ask one more before I turn it to you?
Yeah,
I'm also, I think we all are, maybe, capital punishment. I'm not a fan of it, especially in Florida. Mm-hmm. Florida has had, especially recently, a big problem with it. Like, it even got suspended. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember that. They suspended capital punishment because we're putting way too many people on death row, way too fast, so on. I mean, what's your opinion on capital punishment?
The Republican Liberty Caucus, which I chair, of course, we took a position before this recent court ruling.
Yeah.
We took a position supporting the unanimous jury recommendation requirement before capital punishment could be imposed. So I think that's a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And of course, after we took that position, the Supreme Court did step in and require that. And so, the legislature this past session, they changed the law to require that a unanimous jury recommendation before the imposition of a capital punishment sentence. And you're right, there are issues with it, huge issues with it. In Brevard County, where I'm from, the local newspaper there just did a series of articles because we had a big problem in that district, that state's attorney's district over there. The Brevard, Seminole counties are part of the same district, and we've had no less than I think there were 4 individuals now that were convicted, sentenced to death, spent 20 plus years on death row, and have now been released because they've been found to be innocent after the fact. And it was a huge scandal involving a supposed expert witness that the state brought in as a part of the prosecution. And the guy had a dog, a German Shepherd, that he claimed was capable of sniffing out evidence and these kinds of things. And turns out the guy was a complete fraud. He was basically going around the country getting paid, thousands of dollars to testify, carrying this dog with him everywhere that he went. And it turns out he's a fraud.
Yeah.
He's a complete fraud. And these 4 guys were innocent. And so now, the state's on the hook for paying them millions of dollars for their wrongful incarceration. And that's fine. But what's the compensation for taking somebody's freedom?
Of course,
right.
Is there any compensation for that? I don't see how there is. I don't see how there's enough money in the world to compensate somebody for 20 years of their life basically taken from them. So it is a tough issue, but quite frankly, I do see that there are cases where it's an appropriate form of punishment. We just have to be very careful about the way that we dole it out.
Okay, good.
Actually, that was all the questions I had.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
well, I guess another question from somebody on my page. They were asking if, God forbid, you were not to make it, would you end up endorsing whoever the next person is?
It would depend on who they are, and it would depend on on how they conduct themselves during the course of this campaign.
I think specifically it was Adam that was mentioned. Would you endorse? Well, no, the name was Adam. Yeah, would you?
I would have. Look, given what I know about Adam Putnam, I'll just be upfront. I'd have a very hard time with that. I haven't made a decision one way or the other. I'm so laser focused on just my own campaign and winning this thing that that's all I have a tendency to think about at this point in time. But certainly he's somebody that, in my mind, has some real issues. He's the poster child for career politicians.
Yeah, since he was 22.
Exactly. He's been a politician for over half his life.
Yeah,
and he's never earned a private sector paycheck in his entire adult life. I say earned because he's certainly received them.
Yeah.
Right.
But he's never earned one. He basically became a millionaire on the backs of the Florida taxpayers. That's an interesting story that I'll get into if we have time for it. And he's got a horrible voting record in Congress. This is a guy that voted for, every bailout. He voted for TARP. He voted for the Wall Street bailouts. He voted for No Child Left Behind. He voted for cash for clunkers. I mean, for heaven's sake, Jesus. Cash for clunkers? I mean, anybody with a rudimentary understanding of the free market economy and the laws of supply and demand could see that train wreck coming from a mile away.
Right.
But Adam Putnam, he was all in on cash for clunkers. So I question his judgment about those kinds of things. But here's the other side of the equation. Who's he going to be running against if it should happen to be him?
That was going to be my next question. Do we have any idea? I didn't look it up on who the Democrats are.
Well, they've got some people running already. One of them is Gwen Graham, who is the daughter of Bob Graham, former governor and United States senator. So she's trading on Daddy's name.
Okay.
Her career as a politician was she did 1 2-year term in the Congress in a district up in North Florida that
Congress?
Yeah, U.S. Congress.
Okay.
She had 1 2-year term there, and then redistricting kicked in, and her district suddenly became not so favorable for the Democrat anymore. So she immediately decided not to run for re-election. And started almost immediately testing the waters for a gubernatorial run. But again, I mean, this is somebody that's trading on her father's name and her father's goodwill and good graces. So you've got that. Then you've got the mayor of Tallahassee, which is a guy named Andrew Gillum. And he started out as a house of fire. I mean, he was raising money and very eloquent, articulate guy for those causes. But now all of a sudden, the city government in Tallahassee is caught up in investigations from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement as well as the FBI over their CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, issues that are going on up there. And he's caught up in that. Plus, he made the boneheaded move of using city money to purchase a new software program that he then turned around and started using to put out fundraising invitations for partisan races, for Democrats that were running. So he's all caught up in that, and he apologized and said it was a mistake, and that kind of stuff. But so he's things for him look real shaky right now.
Yeah.
You got a guy in Orlando named Chris King, who's he's a businessman. He's made good money for himself on affordable kinds of housing projects for seniors and others. But he's very, very much a liberal progressive. And then, of course, the big dog, if he chooses to get in the race, will be John Morgan.
Yeah, that's the one I was kind of curious on.
Everybody's waiting to see what John's going to do.
Yeah.
And he's got the luxury. He's probably the one guy that has the luxury of being able to wait for almost as long as he wants to, because instant name, 100% name recognition.
Absolutely.
John for the money Morgan. Right. That's what I'm calling him. And now there's a guy with a substance abuse problem, but it's not weed, it's alcohol.
Do you have any opinions on the Libertarian candidate running?
I really don't. Honest to goodness, I don't. I from what I understand, he's a hell of a nice guy. But I have not really spent any time researching his record.
Is he the only one? Is that who I think?
All I know of so far is the guy from Lake County, right?
Yeah. Is it Lake County?
I think so.
Yeah, it's Randy Weissman.
Yes. Former school board member, as I recall. Yeah. And from what I understand, he's a really nice guy, but I'm not spending any time worrying about that. I mean, that's a general election thing for me.
Right.
I'm literally, the filters are up and the blinders are on. I'm concentrating on the Republican primary, and that's it.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. You gotta win that race before you go for the next.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, go ahead, sell yourself real quick to
everybody at Facebook World.
Republicans in Florida, Democrats in Florida, whatever you want to do.
Sure. Well, again, it all comes back for me to this primary issue of restoring the voice of the people in government and putting government back under their control, because they've lost control, they've lost their voice, and campaign finance reform is just an absolutely critical issue. The money is out of control. Here's an example. $38 million. Now put a dollar sign in front of that. $38 million. That's the amount of money that lobbyists registered with the state of Florida. Forget our friends in Washington, D.C. Yeah. This is just lobbyists registered with the state of Florida. Made $38 million, not last year, but in the first 3 months of this year alone.
Oh, wow.
That's a staggering figure. So anybody that tries to tell me that Tallahassee has not become a pay-to-play environment, they're just not paying attention to the numbers. It absolutely is a pay-to-play environment, and if you're not paying, you're not playing up there. People aren't listening if you can't bring big dollars to the table. Those are the same guys that are representing all these special interests and bringing all these millions of dollars in dark money contributions into these political committees that are being operated by my opponents and also by other members of the Florida legislature. the leadership, et cetera. It's how they keep control over the process and control over the agenda. And here's the real crime of it all. These political committees, they can pass this money back and forth. They give it to each other, so that ultimately it hides where what the original source of the money was. So
it's like laundering.
It is laundering. That's exactly what we've called it. It's not criminal, but it ought to be. So that's to me. I mean, think about it. Regardless of what your position is on the issues, and regardless of what your philosophy is out there in the electorate, your voice ought to be heard. Mm-hmm. So whether you're a Republican or an independent or a Democrat, your voice needs to be heard.
Yeah.
The government needs to be under your control and not under the control of the special interests. So there's where I see myself as being set apart from every other candidate in the race on either side, is that one single issue.
Okay.
All right. Excellent. Well, we definitely appreciate you coming down. And,
it's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, good. Excellent.
Same here.
Great.
Excellent. Yeah, no, it's good to finally meet you. Mo's talked about you a whole bunch, so I was definitely happy to be able to get you on.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love to do it again sometime.
Yeah,
definitely.
And anytime you'd like, just let us know, and we'd be happy to have you.
And Mo, don't forget, there's a conference call on Sunday night. You'll be getting the call-in instructions soon.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for listening. If you're checking us out on SoundCloud or if you're listening on our website at www.muddiedwatersoffreedom.com. Remember, you can follow us at facebook.com/Muddied Waters of Freedom, on Instagram at Muddied Waters of Freedom, or on Twitter at Muddied_Waters. Almost forgot that one. You want to do one last bula?
Yes, I have some.
I got a very little amount. All right.
Okay, I'll go in on this one.
Good.
You're going to want to shake the ever-living crap out of that one because it's all settled at the bottom.
Okay. I didn't know you got to say bula when you did this.
You do, yeah.
All right, here we go.
That's what's so fun about it. It's like a community thing, you know.
Well, given the way you describe the taste, there's got to be some redeeming value.
Yeah.
and bula means to long life and good health.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So it shows up. Bula.
Bula.
Yeah, you're right. That tastes like dirt. That's nasty. No offense to your kava bar.
Don't try to ban it now.
It'll ban itself. I don't think you have to worry
Very
about
true.
Well, again, thank you all very much for listening or watching or whatever. And thank you, Bob, for coming on the show.
Thank you, Bob.
Good luck in the election.
Thank you.
You got anything else?
No, I'm good to go. And remember, guys, where we're going?
We don't need roads.
I'm living with the gimmick.